Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the vlog, and this time we're going to talk about productivity. Now, before we begin, a small disclaimer. I believe everyone should use their own system. No two people work alike, and everyone has their own favorite to-do list, favorite way of increasing productivity. I can only give you tips and tricks of what I do to keep myself productive. And even in those cases, it does not always work out well. I believe everyone can be distracted from time to time, even when they have their perfect system set up. And so the reason I want to talk to you about productivity this week is because a few days ago, I added an Instagram post showcasing that I was actually working on paper for a feature I was working on. And one of my followers actually asked me, can you do a vlog on that? And so I'll give you some tips and tricks on how I work with, or at least with what programs I work with of course the paper system that I work with, and some general tips and tricks that I did to improve my productivity. Now, productivity is a really hard thing. I notice everyone talks about it. You know, you can find endless amounts of blog posts about productivity. But like I said in the disclaimer, not everything works. But first of all, let's start with my flow. And usually when I work for a client, we work with the system that the client has in place. So for my current client, it's actually Jira that we work with, and we have a kind of Kanban board that we set up in which tickets arrive in a status open, and we start doing them. They go from open to in progress to review, so that another developer can review the code. Next up is to test, where the product owner checks if the feature does what they want it to do. And basically, as soon as that is done, it goes into release. And when the release is done, it goes into done. Now, sometimes the issues are pretty small and it's easy to flesh out the feature, do the changes and everything. But sometimes you have like these bigger tasks that need a little bit more tracking on what you want to do. And you could add comments inside the task itself, but I tend to use a paper system for that. I could also put them in my regular to-do application, but I never kind of do that for my client's system. Now, note, I am thinking about changing my paper system to actually also trying to do it inside my to-do application. But for now, it's actually pretty simple. So I made a small example of how I usually do this. So I just create on my paper the heading to do, and then basically I have a checkbox that says when it's completely clear, it means the to-do list or the task itself is still open. If it's half checked, it means that I'm working on it, so I can keep track next day, like, oh yeah, right, I was doing this thing. If it's completely black, it means this thing is done, I don't have to worry about it. Then you have the one that has the big cross through it, which means it's completely closed. We're not going to do it, it's either cancelled or it's no longer relevant. And then what I tend to do is, if I have it to do with more information, I use an array, an arrow. I just finished coding, so I use an arrow, and then I just enter or just note the extra information that I have. Now, of course, this is just something I created, but in reality, it looks something like this. So what you can see here is that on top I have, and we're working with Symfony, and so with different bundles, I tend to put in which bundle it is, and then what file, what function, and then with the arrow, I indicate what still needs to be done in that function. And then it can go from big things like I still have to flesh out the entire feature or flesh out the entire function, to small things like check how we use, for example, entity A to update entity B, like having the methods and stuff like that. I also tend to do a lot of writing my notes while I'm working on, and then it looks like this. So up here you can see that I have my entire structure of components. So these are from an external source, these are ours, and it helps me kind of visualize everything that I still need to do, but also how it should be built. And so this is for my paper system. Then for my other system, my program, I use Things, which I think only works on Apple, I'm not really sure. And Things, so I've used a lot of different ones, from Remember the Milk to Todoist to Basecamp. I've tried so many, Wunderlist, but for some reason Things is the one that sticks best to me. And that is because I like the way they set up their system. So you can begin with creating an area. And an area is basically a way to group different to-dos, and that's the next item, projects, based on your responsibility or location. You can actually do with it as you like. You could add one for work, one for personal. In my case, I have different ones, one for the business, one for the local brand, one for other stuff like the vlog and the blog. And then a level below that, you have the projects. And the projects is, well, it actually says it itself. You add a project and you can see its progress based on the little circle in front of it. And then inside a project, but you can also do this in an area, you can add headings. And headings is a nice way of separating different phases inside a project. For example, in this one, I have a vlog, and one is the setup before I do the vlog. The other one is actually recording and what needs to happen. Now this is just an example. These are not real life to-dos on this part. So that's my Things setup, and I use it for everything else that is not client related. Unless it's smaller clients, then I tend to put them in here as well. And then next up, to improve my productivity, I only use one app that combines both my mails and my calendars, which is Spark. And the nice thing about Spark is that as soon as you add your first email, Spark actually uses that one on their system, so that when you log into a different device, it automatically syncs all of the settings and all of your other email accounts that you connected to that account on any device you want. So that means I can easily check out everything. I can set up the entire Spark app on, for example, my MacBook. I can then just go to my iPhone, download the Spark app, log in with one email, and I can see my full inbox of all my emails. All the settings remain the same. So that is part of one of the productivities, or part of the flow of the productivity that I have. Now there's one more thing that I did last week which helped me enormously, and which was also a post on Instagram, and that is this little device. Your phone. It is one of the more productivity breaking tools you have. And I think in this day and age, most people do not own their phone, but their phone owns them. Just think about all the notifications you get from emails, messages, social media, which is the biggest productivity killer. And so I actually changed the way my phone works. I set up well, the first thing I did was set up a do not disturb scheduled one. So each evening at 8, my phone automatically goes into do not disturb. There's also not so much for productivity, but that part is more for just getting disconnected and winding down before I go to sleep. And I might do some stuff in the evening, and then it helps not to be disturbed either. The second thing I did is I removed almost all notifications, which means that my phone does no longer determine when I should check it, like saying, hey, you have a new Instagram like, you have a new tweet that you're mentioned in, or whatever. I decide when I check my Instagram, I decide when I check Twitter, I decide when I look at Facebook. And I no longer feel, after a few days already, feel the need to constantly check my phone and do I have new likes or tweets or whatever. It's actually something that helps me relax more by not being worried about the social media. And also one thing I did, but this is exclusively, I think, for, I'm not sure, it could be for all phones, but I disabled the rise on wake, which means that if you pick up your phone, it automatically like lights up and shows you your notifications. I don't have any more notifications mostly on this system, so I also stopped doing the race on wake. Because if you accidentally take up your phone and you do have like a notification, for example, say a message from someone, I don't need to see it immediately. And so if I just pick it up, for example, to go to a meeting, it springs up, it's like distracting. You're immediately pulled out from what you were doing or preparing, and you're immediately distracted towards that message. So that's about it for productivity. I might have one more extra tip. If you work in an environment where there's a lot of noise, it pays off to buy a noise cancelling headset. I myself have bought the Bose Quiet Comfort 35 Mark II, which is so good when you're in a open office space. People are chatting, people are calling, people are yelling or just plain near throwing stuff because their code doesn't work. Happens. I've seen it happen. And basically the Bose kind of makes me go into my own little zone away from everything else. It's just me, my screens, my code, and my feature that I need to build. And that's just one of the extra tips I have for productivity. So let me know in the comments what you do to improve your productivity and share it with the rest of the community. And I'll see you in the next episode.